Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Yasumi. Today I'm going to get in touch with a fantastic figure, Rayn Carrier, Executive Director at ForHumanity and President of ForHumanity Europe. Rayn has experience as the Director of World Bank, Macquarie Bank, and also as a ex-Vice President for Sanofi. So today we'll be diving deep into the world of AI governance and responsible innovations. We'll discuss the recently introducing EU AI Act, its connection to GDPR, compliance, the role of ethics committees, and the potential independent AI audits. So keep watching. Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm also doing good. Thank you, Brian, for accepting my invitation with a quick notice. As I informed you, I'm running a tech channel with tech discussions. So I basically cover the AI, generative AI, and the next level of AI and some other topics ahead. And it's good to have you to talk on the AI ethics, AI governance, responsible innovation, audits, EU Act and stuff. So before starting today's discussion, I would like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. I know that you have been worked as the director of the World Bank Group, Macquarie Bank, and as the VP also as in S&P. And now you are the president and director of ForHumanity Europe. So yeah, why not introduce yourself?
Want to record it or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So are we recording now?
Yeah, I have started recording.
Okay, great. So yeah, as you mentioned, prior to founding ForHumanity in 2016, I had a 25-year finance career, the end of which I was the founder and CEO of a hedge fund. But that hedge fund was something that I survived and didn't thrive at. And the reason I tell you that is it means I have to close it. So it's 2016, I'm closing my hedge fund. We'd built artificial intelligence to help us manage money, so I'm good familiarity with AI. But Yasumi, the most important part of my story and the journey and where ForHumanity came from is in 2016, I had two boys, or have two boys, and they were 4 and 6 years old. And I kind of had time on my hands because when you're closing a hedge fund, it takes time, but it's not a full-time job. So I knew AI, I've got my boys, and I kind of projected out into their future, what their future was going to look like, given a lack of governance, oversight, and accountability on these tools. And I don't mind sharing with you and anyone listening, I got scared. Scared enough for their future that I started a nonprofit public charity with no money and no plan. It was just the mission statement. And the mission statement is this: to examine and analyze downside risk associated with AI, algorithmic, and autonomous systems. So that's the scope of what ForHumanity looks at. But we take technology where it is. So we don't prohibit or ban anything. We leave that up to countries. We take the technology where it is and we say, how do we manage as much risk as possible from these tools? And the theory is if you manage a lot of the risk, well, then you maximize the benefit for humans or for humanity. And that's where the overly ambitious name of the organization came from. Without having a plan, I wrote a lot of words trying to figure out what we should do and where we should look. So I wrote about future of work, technological unemployment, rights and freedoms in the fourth industrial revolution, data, should we own our own data? All these pieces are still out there and people can read them as they like. But they're all huge topics. They're going to take 20, 30, 40 years, generational topics to resolve. And I'm a pretty practical person, so I needed something to do now. And that's when I settled on borrowing from financial audit, financial accounting and reporting, which if you don't know the world of finance, you won't realize that we have a 50+ year track record of building an enormous amount of trust, what I call an infrastructure of trust, about how the world can examine companies through their financial accounts and reports. And so what we do, or what I started to write about for the first time in June of 2017, is independent audit of AI systems. a mechanism to bring an enormous amount of trust, an enormous amount of transparency, disclosure, governance, oversight, and accountability into AI, algorithmic, and autonomous systems. And so since 2017, that's been the primary work of ForHumanity, and we're doing a lot to really foster that environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So where can we find the publications and all you have written in your website?
So many of the things are on our website, which is forhumanity.center, CENTER. But really, it's for the use of the community. So the vast majority of our community, which is more than 2,000 people from 97 countries around the world, join our Slack community. It's a working group community. It has more than 150 sort of working groups or channels inside of it. Everyone is welcome to be in there. There's only 2 requirements to gain access. One is you have to provide your email address, and 2, you have to agree to the code of conduct. But besides those 2 demands, which is 100% of what ForHumanity would ever demand of any of its volunteers, then you have access to literally every one of the more than 7,000 independent audit controls, treatments, and mitigations across 48 different certification schemes around the world, body of knowledge repositories, guidelines, templates, all the things that you need to begin to build compliance for these tools.
Got it, Ryan. Thank you very much. So I'll post those links as well. So I would like to discuss about the recently enacted EU AI Act with you. This legislation marks a significant shift in regulating AI development and deployment as well. So what's your view on it, and what are the most significant changes this act brings compared to the existing approaches to the AI in governance?
Sure. So it's the first major global law regulating artificial intelligence. By the way, it's not fully done yet. There's been approved. They actually have not released the final text yet. So they're still settling on the full enactment. And that's when the clock will start ticking for compliance. But it should be very soon. The major changes that the law brings, first off, it requires upstream, downstream liability management. So providers of tools have to provide certain aspects of compliance and disclosure to those entities that would deploy the artificial intelligence. And so now what it's doing for the first time is it's establishing a liability framework so that there are duties along the way, duties along the supply chain that have to be met so that AI subjects have a reduced chance of having harm happen to them. And an AI subject is a natural person who has an AI's decisions put upon them, like a data subject. And that's the terminology that we use. There are prohibited systems in artificial intelligence in the EU AI Act, namely around the way that biometric identification of natural persons is used in law enforcement, but also that it cannot generate social score and it can't generate social behavior scores where you might manipulate or distort someone's behavior. So there are a series of prohibitions that you start with. And after that, you have to build a robust framework of compliance. And that starts in the beginning of the algorithmic life cycle, and it goes to the end life of the algorithmic life cycle. So there are responsibilities in data management and governance, responsibilities in how it's developed and how it's designed, documentation that has to be delivered all along the way, from data all the way to monitoring. There is a quality management system to validate and assure the performance of these systems. Risk management is integrated throughout. Human oversight is required. So in the world of human oversight, ForHumanity demands that all of these tools have some form of human oversight, whatever is appropriate and applicable. And that depends on the scope, nature, context, and purpose of any AI system. Some systems should be mostly autonomous, but even then you want a group outside of the system who is periodically checking, a group of humans who are periodically checking on a tool to ensure it's continuing to deliver its intent or its purpose, and that the model stays fit for purpose. But other times you need humans in the loop or on the loop. And for high-risk AI, the EU AI Act, Article 14, demands human oversight. We actually give that human oversight that they describe in technical detail a specific name. We call it human in command. That human in command has to be ready and able and trained and get a certain technology feed that shows anomalies, outliers, and exceptions from any high-risk AI system. And they have to be prepared to pause or terminate the system, and they have to be trained on how to overcome automation bias so that they do their job correctly. So human interaction and human oversight is required by the law. So it really is a significant set of embedded, compliance requirements, disclosures to supervisory authorities, seeking out conformity assessments, which today they will allow self-assessment, but that will change over time. They couldn't do anything other than require self-assessment in the law for a very simple reason. There was not sufficient infrastructure in the marketplace to require third-party oversight. There weren't enough people. There's an estimate of more than 8 million AI systems that will fall under the EU AI Act. And think about all the people who have to assess compliance with that. It's a ton of work, and it's a huge ecosystem of people that has to come together to deliver and assure that conformity. So they couldn't do anything other than require self-assessment today. But in the future, that will change, and they will require eventually third-party conformity assessments, and eventually they'll require independent audits. I have no doubts about this. Did that answer your question, Yasumi?
Yeah, you answered it well. So you brought up this focus on high-risk AI. Can you elaborate on the specific risk categories outlined in the Act and how that risks can impact companies developing or using such systems?
Under the EU AI Act, you have a couple of ways that they define high-risk systems. Safety features of many standard infrastructure pieces like cars or critical infrastructure. Anything that's safety related falls under Annex 2, which is the harmonized requirements. So they basically say if there's already laws and harmonized standards in place and you're a safety feature of those, then you're a high risk. In addition to that, they have Annex 3, which describes a whole bunch of a whole bunch of additional areas that are classified as high risk. Critical infrastructure, anything having to do with employment, hiring, and your employment status. There's financial pieces. There are, again, surveillance in terms of biometric identification of natural persons, uses of AI in the judicial system, and in governing immigration as well. So Annex 3 describes all the list of high-risk AIs as well. It's too long to go into, but what we do is we essentially say, look, you have to do an assessment of your tool against these laws to essentially decide, am I high risk or not? And here's the other big influence. There's a lot of so the list is not exhaustive from the law. And they've already anticipated that they will have to update the list. And in fact, they did along the way. They added recommendation engines, and then they added general purpose AI as they were drafting the law. So you can already see the changeable nature of the law. The influence that this law will have is that many institutions will be building and managing their own AIs, and they will seek conformity with the law, even if they don't have to. And that'll become a version of the world's best practices, so that they know if they're ever governed by the law, or if they want to sell into the European Union, that they're able and that their system is prepared and designed to do so. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Ran. So let's move on to GDPR compliance as well. So how does the UAI Act build upon or expand on these GDPR regulations for AI?
So, well, I can tell you how we approach it, right? GDPR has been enforced for 6 years, and now data protection applies to AI, algorithmic, and autonomous systems, right? And the use of personal data in those systems is still governed by GDPR. So what you have is you've got the EU AI Act governing the AI system, but if you have personal data, GDPR still fully applies. So really what you're looking for, and this is something that ForHumanity does, is a harmonized set of controls and treatments, mitigations, and the way that you satisfy these laws. So what we've done is we've submitted to the European Data Protection Board a certification scheme for AI, algorithmic, and autonomous systems, under GDPR. So that is being reviewed by the European Data Protection Board currently. At the same time, we've built a certification scheme where if you follow all of the rules we've got listed, we would argue, or we believe, that you've satisfied all of the laws under the EU AI Act. And what I can tell you is that we've created a harmonized set of rules. So for example, it's not doubled up. Because GDPR applies to personal data, for example, there's a necessity assessment required. Well, in the EU AI Act, we require a necessity assessment, but only for non-personal data. Why? Well, because if personal data is present, you already have to do it over here in the GDPR certification scheme. So that's an example of the integration that we've built to facilitate compliance for organizations all around the world seeking GDPR satisfaction and EU AI Act satisfaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the rules and laws that govern, I'll give you a slightly different example. GDPR requires that the processing of data is fair and transparent. Fairness applied to an AI system is very, very different than fairness applied to just a simple data process. Because the AI system is making all sorts of conclusions, inferences about persons when it processes personal data. And those inferences and conclusions have to be adjudicated as fair. So one of the things that it necessitates is you need people who are trained in how to evaluate the fairness of these systems. It is not just a legal question, it is an ethics question. And so one of the things that ForHumanity advocates for, and we're working through the standards bodies, both ISO and CEN-CENELAC, to support this idea, is you need a standing and empowered ethics committee trained in algorithm ethics who can help adjudicate when data processing or AI systems are fair. Are they sufficiently transparent? Are they not materially distorting people's behavior? Are they not engaging in detrimental nudges? All of these sort of assessments are the domain of trained ethics officers who are trained in understanding these issues, which are legal, but they're not well defined in terms of where that line is crossed between something that is illegal and legal. And that is the domain of an ethics officer, adjudicating instances of ethical choice. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan, for the detailed explanation. So let's move on to the importance of ethics and audits. So shifting gears slightly, how your work at ForHumanity or your championship in that expertise, you have that expertise in that audit and ethics. So how you champion the importance of establishing strong ethics committees within the organizations? Like, what are the key qualities, key functions of a well-established ethics committee for effective AI governance?
Yep. So start with ethics committees. We're actually very close to releasing a paper. So we have a paper out called Rise of the Ethics Committee, which just talks about the general importance of ethics committees and why they're necessary for the socio-technical systems called AI, algorithmic and autonomous systems. We're about to expand that into a list of nearly 50 requirements of a standing and empowered ethics committee, which highlights the training and expertise of an ethics officer. And what people will see pretty quickly is that it's not just the domain of a lawyer. You are not just interpreting the law, you're also interpreting your own code of ethics. And these ranges of application of even design features and how they impact the way a person even thinks. The difference between a positive nudge and a detrimental nudge, as an example. Engaging in an assessment of proportionality. If you go to surveil a train station, right? What you've done is you've said, look, people, we believe that by surveilling a train station, we will increase your security. Right? We want to identify if there's terrorists or people doing bad things. So what you've done is you've raised people's security, which is great, right? But at the same time, you've reduced their privacy. So you've taken their rights and freedoms and let's say they were imbalanced, right? And you've shifted them. So the concept of proportionality or fundamental rights impact assessments, these are the works of people who understand the law and human rights law, but also people who understand the shared moral framework in which we operate, the shared moral framework of the company itself, and how to apply that shared moral framework to these questions. If I reduce your privacy in that surveillance, what can I do to make the cost of that loss of privacy less? Now, are there things that I can put in place that increase your privacy, maybe through anonymization? Maybe through not retaining data that we don't need, and we don't put your privacy at risk. Maybe we are creating pseudonymization along the way to protect you as well. So there's a lot of steps that can be considered, and these are the role of an ethics committee. Now, an ethics committee doesn't operate onto itself. It operates in conjunction with legal teams. It operates in conjunction with the experts on these AAA systems. We call them the Algorithmic Risk Committee, but they're experts in the unique risk of these tools. And together, these groups are the ones who are providing governance, oversight, and accountability. But you've added expertise on ethics, on establishing a code of ethics, on establishing all of these assessments and methods and procedures to adjudicate all of these unique instances of ethical choice that occur not just in the operation of the system, but at the design level, at the development level, at the deployment level. I'll give you an example of what I view as a terrible ethical mistake of a very popular tool, which is ChatGPT. ChatGPT was trained, and many of the similar sort of large language models have been trained on scraping the web, right? And in scraping the web, what they've done in terms of acquiring all this data is they've acquired a whole bunch of copyright, a whole bunch of intellectual property. Quite honestly, they have a right to use it, but under license. And they did not duly license it. To me, this is an ethical question. This is an instance where they have used intellectual property without the proper license, and now they're being sued for it. And so a couple of points that I would make about that is, number one, as a user, I would want to know that you've acquired all this intellectual property without license. You know why? Because I wouldn't use your tool, because I believe that behavior is unethical. And I have a right to know that so that I can make that good choice, because I support the importance of copyright. I support the importance of intellectual property, patents, and so on. So if number one, I think that needed to be disclosed, and of course it was not. Now we have all these lawsuits, and the harm or the damage that may come from this could be multiple billions of dollars should the intellectual property holders win. And again, that should have been a disclosure to investors and people who are working with OpenAI on ChatGPT. And by the way, it's not just ChatGPT. Most other large language models have have made this, what I guess I would describe as an unethical decision, of which it wasn't disclosed, it wasn't documented, it wasn't even considered, as far as we can tell. From the outside looking in, we have no transparency about this. So that's kind of another example of the importance of an ethics committee overseeing, not overseeing, they're not in charge, but what they do is they provide a specific lens, a specific perspective that says, here are the things that we stand for as an organization, but here's what the things that we stand for as a society as well. And these tools are not being developed with good ethical oversight. That's something I'm quite comfortable in saying. Did I answer your question?
Yes. So it's one of the crucial points. So as you told, there should be ethics and rules and regulations for these things. So diversity in perspectives and clear decision-making process seems to be also crucial elements. So when you talk about these kind of examples, how such committees can identify and address potential ethical concerns during various stages of the AI development life cycle?
Yeah, it's a really great question. We produced a separate paper called Diverse Input and Multi-Stakeholder Feedback. And what that's about is essentially saying you need more people in the room assessing risk. You need diverse input, and there's easy ways to say diverse input, right? We want multiple different protected categories. Now, every jurisdiction has their own definition of protected categories, but they're often race and gender and age, right? So there's commonalities to many of these. And one of the things that all producers or providers and developers of these tools is they need more diverse input into the process. However, it is not just protected categoryness that you require. When I train people on this, I have this great picture I put up, and you can see it's multiple different colors, and you can see different genders, and you see different ages. And so you look at the picture and you're like, wow, that's a really diverse group. And then I tell you, yes, but they all went to MIT. And it's not that MIT is a bad place. MIT is a great place. Very smart people come out of MIT. But the problem is when you go to MIT, you're trained in how to think a certain way. And that might be very different than how people think at other universities or in other countries or in other places around the world. So when we talk about diversity, we want diversity of thought and diversity of lived experience, as well as diversity of your protected categoryness. So we require diverse input and multi-stakeholder feedback, which includes a 360-degree perspective of who your stakeholders are. And it includes direct stakeholders, indirect stakeholders like communities, as an example, but also external third parties like the environment or nature or markets that could be impacted by your tool. So you have this 360-degree perspective of stakeholders. That gets more people in the room. You have protected categories, diversity of thought, diversity of lived experience. Now you have more people, and now their job is to say, what risks are present? And more people will think about more possible risks and harms. And now once you've identified those risks and harms, then you can analyze them and evaluate them and treat them with your traditional risk management process and build a more robust system that will result in less negative impacts to all of those stakeholders, whoever they might be. And so we require this process all throughout the algorithmic lifecycle, thinking about risks from data selection, thinking about risks from architectural inputs and the way you build and design the system, thinking about how you deploy it, thinking about how you monitor it, and then even the decommissioning decision. So all along, we have more people required in the equation who are thinking about what the risks and negative impacts might be to a wider circle of stakeholders. That makes sense?
Yeah. Perfect. Another concept gaining traction is independent AI audits, right? So how do you see these independent AI audits playing a role in enforcing the ethical AI practices?
I'm extremely biased in this question because it's the main work that ForHumanity does. But let me tell you a reason why. When it comes to the enforcement mechanisms, what we currently have is we have countries, governments, building laws. So the laws are there. Now, if you've ever driven in the United States or parts of Europe, not Germany, because in some places they don't have speed limits, but most places do, people drive over the speed limit very regularly. So that means they're breaking the law, but nobody cares. Why does nobody care? Well, because there's no enforcement in that moment in time. Okay. Well, that's the problem that we have with many of these laws today, is there are laws in place, but they're not sufficiently enforced. So people are breaking the law all the time. And as a result, people are being harmed by bad data practices, by high-risk AIs, for example. So one of the things that we noted, that I noted when I first designed this concept of independent audit of AI systems, is in financial accounting, in tax compliance, we have far less examples of where people are regularly breaking the law. So something's different. And that difference is independent audit of AI systems. Yasumi, this is a fundamental fact of human nature. You and I can agree, and there's a lot of people out there that want to do the right thing. So we do the right thing until we get busy, until we get distracted, until our bosses are like, look, we got to get this product out. We got to get market share. The competitors are coming, right? Until some other influence changes our behavior. We learned hundreds of years ago when it came to education that we learn better if there's a teacher in the room, someone who holds the students accountable, a third-party, independent person who's examining, have you completed the work? I'm going to test you. Do you know the knowledge? Okay. That third-party oversight changes our behavior. Now we complete the tasks to completion. Now we study harder because we know we're going to get tested. Well, the same is true of independent audits of financial accounts and reporting. 50 years ago, what happened is when auditors would start to walk into the room, people used to always react the same way. It's the auditors, right? It's going to be like a bad doctor's visit for the next 6 weeks. And it's because it was hard to generate compliance. And what they learned into the 80s and into the early 90s is, well, let's build our compliance by design. And it changed the behavior. So now when auditors walk in, we meet them at the front door with a smile on our face, and we walk them up to the third floor conference room. We lock them in that conference room for 6 weeks. We slide food under the door 3 times a day, and we pump audit compliance at them. Why? Because we've built all of our systems to be compliance by design. And so now that working with those auditors, it's a non-event. It doesn't trouble us at all because all of our systems are built compliance by design from the outset. And what that means is that we're compliant. That's what we need with our AI systems. When we know that third-party independent auditor is coming to check our transparency, our disclosure, our ethical oversight process, making sure that our data management and governance is done the right way. When we know that third party is coming in, we will build all of our tools compliance by design. And what that means with that speed limit analogy is it means we don't speed. We can't go above the speed limit. It's built in that our car drives 55 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers, whatever the number is. We're built to stop there, right? We're built with that compliance by design, and we're built to make our tools much safer from the beginning. So the value of third-party independent audit is when that outside group is coming, they have no incentive to say, yes, you've complied with the work. It's simply their job to say, you've complied or you have not complied. And that's where ForHumanity has to come into the equation, because laws, guidelines, regulations, standards, none of these things are written to be auditable completely. So what we do is we take all of those in our crowdsourced, transparent way, and we establish audit rules that third-party independent auditors can use to evaluate if you've achieved compliance. That's one role that ForHumanity plays, is to establish those rules. And we work with governments and regulators to do so, like the European Data Protection Board with GDPR. The other role that we play is through our ForHumanity University, where we train people on what those compliance rules look like. So we train people on what it looks like to be compliant with more than 200 rules for GDPR, the more than 300 rules for the EU AI Act, so that we have third-party independent auditors who are out there who can provide this oversight and accountability to groups. And all of this is in support of this ecosystem. We support the idea of independent audit of AI systems so that others can become auditors. Others can become technology providers. Others can provide guidance and consulting, and they can all commercialize it. Our only role as a nonprofit public charity is to support the ecosystem so that there's uniformity, so that there are people practicing independence and anti-collusion, and so that it's fair. Why do we do that? Because we know that independent audit results in the best possible solutions, the best possible protections for humans, for humanity. And that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. So we are coming to the last part of our conversation today. So I have covered a lot of things we thought of discussing today. As we approach to the end, what are your thoughts on the future of AI governance and the role of organizations like your organization ForHumanity in promoting responsible innovation?
So it's a never-ending chase. So you have to plan to always be doing this work. The great example for this is bias. There are people who will mistakenly say we need to eliminate bias in these tools, and I love the idea, okay, but it's also a mathematical impossibility. You cannot eliminate bias, okay. So all you can do is mitigate it, and that means it's a constant process of reviewing, are there more and better steps that we can take to mitigate bias, to control bias, to review how it changes in these systems. And so that is true of everything that we do in terms of AI governance, oversight, and accountability. We always have to be looking for new places where technology is pushing bounds and innovation is now creating new impacts for people. Some of those impacts may be negative. Some of them may be wildly positive for people. And that's great, but are they positive for everybody? What are the risks? And an example of that will be technological unemployment. If we create more efficient systems, if we create the ability to produce smarter and faster and better things, well, that's great for society at large, but it may result in humans losing jobs. And so we have to balance between this innovation and this greater wealth production, but who does that wealth production accrue to? Increasingly, we see income inequality. And so we have to be careful about where these advancements and where these benefits accrue in this process. So there are a lot of different ways that these tools impact people, and making sure that we have robust processes for governance, oversight, accountability, transparency, disclosure. One of the key pieces of disclosure that we require is we would call it residual risk, disclosing to users what the residual risk of a system is. But the easier way to understand residual risk is if you've ever seen a drug commercial or a pharmaceutical commercial, what those advertisements, at least in the United States, this is actually mandated. So the advertisement works like this. For the first 30 seconds, you're allowed to tell the people listening, what does your drug do? It's a new cancer drug. It treats cancer. Fantastic. Love that, right? I have cancer. I want my cancer treated. Okay. So you're giving me a new drug and you get 30 seconds to tell me why this drug is great. Love that. The second 30 seconds talk about what the risks are. And we would call these residual risks or side effects. So they did clinical trials with this drug, and in doing those clinical trials, they have to document all of the risks that people suffered, all the negative impacts that they suffered. So the second 30 seconds of that advertisement will say, and by the way, if you take our drug, you might get dry mouth, and you might get redness at the injection spot, and your bones might hurt, and by the way, you could die, right? So these are all the list of residual risks. Now, why is that important? Because now that person who's considering taking that drug is an informed user. They have the ability to say, well, look, I have cancer. It's probably a death sentence already. So I want to treat that. And I understand that there's risks associated with that. And now I'm an informed user and I can make better decisions. The same would be true, and I can draw that analogy back to AI with like ChatGPT. Again, if they had disclosed to me, I'm using intellectual property that I haven't duly licensed. Well, now I can basically say, well, gosh, that's not a world of ethics that I support. I'm not using your tool. I might use Claude, or I might use, well, it's called Gemini now, but different names that Google gave theirs for a while. I might use a different tool because maybe they do uphold the ethics that I stand for. So having these disclosures makes me an informed user, and I can make better choices. And that will drive a more ethical market. It will drive a safer market, and it will result in good governance, oversight, and accountability.
Okay, Rayn. So finally, for our viewers who are interested in learning more, I hope you can share some of the resources or the links so that I can share with them. And as a final question, what are the key takeaways for the tech audience who will be watching this video?
I think one of the key takeaways from my perspective is ForHumanity is a place where you are all welcome. So you don't have to be an expert. All perspectives are welcome, and you can find different home. We have countries. We have team countries like Team India. There's not a Team Sri Lanka, by the way, but we need one. Okay. There's a Team India. There's a Team Australia. There's a Team Brazil. There's a Team UK. Right. We have teams for all the different countries, and they come together to figure out what do we need to do to make for better governance, oversight, and accountability in our country. So it's country specific. And then in addition, we have lots of different working groups working on children's rules, disability inclusion and accessibility, employment and hiring, GDPR, model risk management, large language models. We have people who've joined the US AI Safety Institute. We have people who've joined the standards process in Europe. So there's a million different ways to get plugged in. And what I'm putting in the chat is the Get Involved link. So forhumanity.center, and then up at the top, you'll see Get Involved. All that you have to do, and I mentioned this at the beginning of our talk, is that you simply provide your email address and you agree to the code of conduct. And you get full access to our community through Slack. That is a way to get involved. And then we provide a lot of different ways for you to begin to get to know places. But also, I am everyone's Sherpa and guide. It's my job to help people figure out what they care about and get them into the right place. I'm trying to take all the tools that we have and get them into your hands. So I'm here to help as well, and there's lots of other helpful people in the community. The second way that people can plug in is that they can take the courses. So I'm putting that link in the chat as well. It's a separate registration. It's a separate dev site. Okay, but the courses, university, there. Okay, so when you register at ForHumanity University, and by the way, we're changing the name. The university name is a protected word in many countries. It's not in the United States, but it is in many countries. So we'll be changing the name of it. But basically, it's a place where you can go and you can study asynchronously Foundations of Independent Audit of AI Systems. That's our intro course. Then we have 6 ForHumanity certified auditor courses: GDPR, EU AI Act, Digital Services Act, Children's Code, Disability Inclusion and Accessibility, and the New York City Bias Audit. 6 different places where you can become a certified auditor. On top of that, we have expert certificates in risk management and algorithm ethics. We're also building out our algorithm ethics so that we are training fully ready and prepared ethics officers. And there's new courses that will be coming this fall on that. But when you register at ForHumanity University, you can put yourself in every one of those classes. There is no cost for the learning. Once you go through the learning, each lecture is 20 to 25 minutes long, and there's a small quiz associated with each lecture. If you pay attention to the lecture, you will pass the quiz. When you pass all of the quizzes, you are eligible to sit the certification exam. The certification exam does have a small fee. For foundations, it's as little as $100, but there's discounts depending on where you live and if you're a student and things like that. So foundations is $100. The most expensive course we have is the EU AI Act and Algorithm Ethics. Those are $500 before discounts. Again, you can get the knowledge and the learning for free. If you want the certificate, if you want to be able to build upon that for building your career and hopefully use it to advance yourself, then we require a small fee. And that's just because we're a nonprofit public charity. We have to be able to keep our lights on and be able to do things. I did this work for free for 6 years. And as my wife likes to tell me, I don't get to do that forever. So we have a very small budget at ForHumanity, but we do have to have some budget to be able to keep the lights on. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, very well. So, sincere thank you for sharing your insights on AI governance and responsible innovation. So, today's discussion highlighted the importance of responsible AI development, the role of ethics committees and audits in ensuring ethical practices, and the impact of regulations like the AI Act. So, I appreciate your time, Ryan. Thank you very much. So I'll be sharing all these things. We'll meet up in another discussion like this, and also I'll also join the Slack community as from that, and also I'll also get enrolled into the courses so that I can also gain more knowledge into that.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Lots of ways to plug into the work that we do. There are more coming, especially as we do regulatory sandboxes and we're in discussions to help people begin to build the infrastructure around responsible AI. So there's different ways to try to plug in. We're formalizing more of them, but really what you want to do is get involved in some of the working groups. The last thing that I'll do is I'll give you a link to the agenda page. Hold on a second. The agenda page shows you all of the meetings that we have that are open meetings. So there are ways that people can plug in to existing meetings to participate in the work that we do. I'm just popping this in the chat here. And you're welcome to join any or all of those meetings. And that's where you'll begin to build more relationships. You'll build a deeper understanding about how the audit criteria work, and you'll begin to see more of the opportunities in the community. But it is not an employment-based community. We don't even employ people at ForHumanity, so we're still growing into that size and responsibility.
Got it. Thank you very much, Ryan. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. And I wish you a great rest of your Sunday evening.
Yeah, thank you. Your Sunday morning, right? Enjoy.
Yes. I'm off to 3 soccer games today with my boys. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Enjoy them.
All right. Thanks, Yasumi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Ryan. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. So for more discussions, tech discussions like this and content like this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Yasumi. Thank you everyone for joining today and watching my video.